Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon. As Brian said, my name is Gina Santos, and I will be your trainer for the next 2 hours for the SmartList Builder class. For those who you don't know me, I am a senior consultant for the GP practice at Brentford Systems, and I'm a Microsoft certified professional with over 15 years of experience in GP, both as a consultant and as a GP user. During this class, we will go through the basics of SmartList Builder and go through the concepts listed in the training agenda. We will be creating and maintaining SmartList. We will be reviewing the display options that you can use and set up for SmartList fields. We will create links from your SmartLists back to Dynamics GP. We will put fixed restrictions on your SmartList and add calculated fields on your SmartList. And lastly, we will create SmartList to display summarized data from your Dynamics GP system. A couple of administrative items before we start. Throughout the session, please feel free to ask questions. You will be muted during the session, but you can enter your questions in the chat window, as Brian had mentioned, and he will be moderating the session, and he will let me know when someone has posted a question in the chat window. Also, please let us know if you're having issues with hearing us or seeing the screen. And last administrative item, if you'd like to view the screen in full view, you can click on the square with the 4 arrows in the corners in the bottom right corner of the screen. And to return to the chat window, you can press the escape key. Okay, so we can begin. We can start with understanding why we need SmartList Builder. So if we open up SmartList, you can see that we have a large number of SmartList objects that come standard and out of the box with GP. But there are still some types of reports that users need that require data from multiple database tables, sometimes from SQL views. SmartList Builder allows you to build your own reports using a tool that uses a wizard type approach. So you don't necessarily have to possess programming or coding skills to create your own reports. But with that said, it will be helpful to start with a basic understanding of what data you want in your report and how to look for that data. That's probably the most difficult part of using SmartList Builder, so I think it would help to review a little bit prior to jumping into SmartList Builder itself. So I'm going to close SmartList and go through some of the data in GP. In Dynamics GP, there are different types of data that are kept in the system, and they're kept in separate tables. For example, in your financial module, you do have master records that are entered in the cards section. So you know that you have accounts in your account maintenance window that are your chart of accounts. And these are master records. Same thing with checkbook. You go into your checkbook maintenance window to see your master records there. Under transactions, you have unposted transactions that could be in your general entry window. And under inquiry, you can have posted transactions that you can view for open years. They would be in the inquiry windows. And then the history summary would have data from closed years or historical years. Similarly, in purchasing, you will have your master records under the cards. You'll have unposted transactions in your transaction windows. And then you'll have a variety of data, both open and historical data, in your vendor records here, where the open transactions show transactions that have been posted but not fully applied, and then historical transactions are transactions that have been posted and fully matched up with an invoice or a payment. So how do you identify the actual tables where the data resides? There are 2 tools that you can use. The first one is under Tools, Resource Descriptions, and Tables. This opens up the Table Descriptions window, and in clicking the ellipse button, you can see that you can have a list of all the tables for Dynamics GP. They are listed by product, so you can see that your regular modules are under Microsoft Dynamics GP, And if you have additional modules or third-party features that you're using, they're also listed under the product list. So if we looked under Microsoft Dynamics GP, you can choose the series from which you're going to try to derive the data. So under Financial, you will see all of the financial tables. You can change your display and your view of the list by showing it by display name, physical name, technical name, or group technical name. I typically like to see it in table physical name, as that kind of gives us a list in order of the account master records, gives us our work or unposted transactions next, then our open transactions, and then historical transactions. So that's why I prefer to use the table physical name as my view option. And once you do see a table that looks like it is what you're looking for, so if you're looking for account master, you'll see that it's named here as account master, and this is the actual physical name in your SQL database. You can actually double click on it, and you'll see that there are all these data or field names that are provided to you. In clicking on some of these items, you can actually click on field info, and it'll give you more information about the values of the information or the data that's stored in those fields. Okay. And to get back to that list, you can always click on the ellipse button, and it'll get you back to the table names. Again, that is found under Microsoft Dynamics, Tools, Resource Descriptions, and Tables. And that's one way to look for your table names. The other way to look for it is through Report Writer. So a lot of users actually want some of these reports to be available on SmartList so that they can export the data readily to Excel or Word, or be able to do search functions under SmartList. So if we wanted to look at the Report Writer, we can certainly print one of these reports. And I should enter a year. And once I have the report in front of me, which is generated by Report Writer, I can click Modify, and it'll automatically take me to Report Writer, where in that report it will provide me the report definition and the tables that are associated with my trial balance summary. So now I have my account master and my trial balance tables that I've identified. Again, if you go to Report Writer, once you have the report and open the report, you can go to Windows, Report Definition, and hit the tables, and then you can see the tables that are associated with that report. I'm going to head back to Dynamics GP again. And some users like to use the table import function to take a look at the tables that they might want for their SmartList builder. And this is the last way to look at it that we're going to review. So if you wanted to go to table import, there is also a list of tables in that tool. So you can go to Tools, Integrate, Table Import, and just put in a definition ID so that you can engage the rest of the fields in this table or in this window. And you can go to the destination table, and you can see that for each product, you can look at the series, and it'll list for you different kinds of tables that are available in that particular series. In our case, for our example today, we would like to look at all of the posted transactions for vendors that have been fully paid or fully applied against a credit transaction. So what we're looking for would be a list of the paid transactions, and we can look for that table. And I'm probably going to look for this paid transaction history file that has information about all the documents for the vendor ID, and with the document number, document date, and document amount. And I can add that to a smart list that I'm going to build in SmartList Builder. So this is going to be my primary table. Looks like it has all the information that I need. So I will look for my PM paid transaction history file to be able to pull all the paid transactions or fully applied transactions for my vendors. So I'm going to close this. I don't need this definition. I'm just using it to look for my table. So I think we're ready to create a smart list that shows us all of the fully paid, fully matched transactions for my vendors. So to create a smart list using SmartList Builder, we need to open up SmartList Builder, the tool itself. However, it's not accessible to everyone unless you have given access to your users. By default, power users will automatically have access to this tool. And I'll repeat that again. Power users will automatically have access to the SmartList Builder tools. Under Tools, SmartList Builder, anybody who's assigned the power user role should be able to see the SmartList Builder suite of products here if it is installed on the workstation. But for others who are not assigned as power user, you will need to create a security task to assign to those users who should have access to SmartList Builder. So we'll go through that real quickly here. Under Setup, System, you'll need to set up a security task that allows users to access those SmartList Builder windows and screens. So under Security Tasks, you can create a task ID called SmartList Builder. The category would be System, and then the task name would be SmartList Builder, and you can just say SmartList Builder User. And under Microsoft Dynamics Products, you will choose SmartList Builder. The type would be the SmartList Builder permissions, and the series would be SmartList Builder. And you see that these are all of the different forms, windows, and screens that you would need to give to a user in order for them to access SmartList Builder. So again, go to Security Task Setup, enter a task ID, category is System, enter a task name that makes sense to you, choose the product SmartList Builder, the type is SmartList Builder permissions, and the series is SmartList Builder. I can save this. Then, when I have that task, I have to assign it to a role. So under Tools, Setup, System, Security Role, I can say I want to create a SmartList Builder role that I will assign to specific users. Then I can look for that task that we just created called SmartList Builder. I think I just passed it. Here it is. And I can save that. And if I want one of my users to have the ability to build SmartList Builder tools and objects, then I need to assign that role to those users. So under User Security, I'm going to assign the test user within Fabricam Inc. to have access to SmartList Builder, and I do that by selecting the SmartList Builder role. And here it is. Okay. So I save that, and test users should be able to use SmartList Builder within Fabricam. I can save that. Fabricam A, I will also give them access to. Save that. So again, to give one of your non-power users access to SmartList Builder, you have to set up the security task to give them SmartList Builder tools, assign that security task to security role, and then assign it to your user. Okay, so now let's go into SmartList Builder. And to go into SmartList Builder, you just need to go Dynamics GP, Tools, SmartList Builder, and SmartList Builder. This is now the screen in which you can create a new SmartList. Now let's try to create that SmartList using multiple tables, starting with wanting to see all of the transactions for vendors that have been fully paid or fully applied to credit transactions. So I'm going to just name it Z vendor all transactions. And the reason I'm calling it Z here so I can easily see it during the training session. And I'm going to name this as paid transactions. And this SmartList name is what's going to show up on your SmartList view. The item name is another way for you to describe the actual data that's going to be pulled by the SmartList. But the difference is this is not going to be part of your view in SmartList. This SmartList name is what you're going to see as your folder name in the SmartList view. I'm going to choose a product under which this SmartList will be visible. So I'm going to put it under purchasing. And so whenever I open up my SmartList, it will be under the purchasing folder. Now I'm going to add my table. And I'm going to add a GP table. And we decided that we will grab the payables table that has all the paid transaction history file. And these are automatically going to default as the key fields associated with that table. You can keep those, hit save, and now we have added this table into our SmartList. This is a little confusing because it says display here, but the actual fields that will get displayed are the ones that you choose under the default column. So if you want the voucher number to show up, you want the vendor ID to show up, we want the document type, document date, document number, and document amount. Those are the columns that I want to see in my SmartList, and then I can scroll down and see if there's anything else I'd like to see. And I can pick and choose which ones I would like to add to my SmartList. And in this view, you could actually change the listing. You could do it by field position, by field name, so it does it in alphabetical order, or by display name. But field name is very handy because it does it in alphabetical order. So if I wanted to see the 1099 amount for some reason, I could also choose that. I'm going to put it back in field position, and you can see that I have my voucher number, vendor ID, document type, date, document number, and document amount, as well as the 1099 amount as my selected fields that are going to be in my SmartList. Now, as you can see, we don't have the vendor name listed under this table. The only value that's kept is the vendor ID. And I'd like to be able to see the vendor name in this SmartList. So what I can do is add a second table that allows me to grab the vendor name and put it in the same view. So I'm going to add another GP table. It is going to come from purchasing, and I will add the vendor master record. So I will scroll down, and we can see that there's the PM vendor master file. So I will add the PM vendor master file, and to establish the relationship between my primary table and this new table, I have to set a relationship between the two tables. I want to link my transaction history file to the vendor master file by using the vendor ID. And I will create that link between the two by adding a link and choosing the right field in the paid transaction history file. And I know that the vendor ID in that primary table will match, or should match, the vendor ID in my vendor master file. So I know that when I have a paid transaction history file, it will look at my vendor ID in that table, look for it in the vendor master file, and match the vendor IDs. So I hit save, and now I've got my linked fields between the two tables. I hit save here, and now it's going to add that secondary table to my SmartList. Now that I have the vendor master file highlighted, you can see that I now have the vendor name available to me. So I can check on that and say that I would like to see that displayed on my SmartList. A couple things about the display options here. You can actually make changes and edit the settings for your display. So if I looked at the display name, I could actually change this. So I could say this is the system number that is automatically generated by GP, or I can keep it the same way. Use the default. I can keep vendor ID here. I can keep that as a document type. This could be the document date, but we know that is the invoice date or the credit memo date. And then here's the document number and document amount. So at any time, I can actually change it. And that would be displayed as the column heading in SmartList. In addition, I can also change the field options for each one of these fields. So for voucher number, if I wanted to change the display options, I can click on this arrow link, and then I can change the string format if I wanted to, because the system knows this is a string. I could change it, but there's no need to change that since that's a text field. Same thing with vendor ID. It knows it's a string format, so I can just leave it as a string format. And the document type is very interesting. The document type is the kind of transaction it is. It's either an invoice, a payment, a credit memo, miscellaneous charge, or finance charge in the case of this transaction history file. If we wanted to change that, because that shows up as an integer, we could actually change the field options and provide the actual translation of what the integer is to what the true document type is. I'll leave that alone for a second here, and I'm going to show you how that can be changed after we view the actual SmartList. So for now, what we'd like to do is save this and go to SmartList and see what it looks like so far. So when you go to SmartList, you can say you want to make the changes now, and what SmartList will do will refresh the actual SmartList objects so that it will add your new tool in your list of SmartList objects. So I will hit yes, and then it'll open up SmartList for me. And if you remember, we saved that new SmartList under Purchasing, so it should now be under, let me try that again. Make sure that we save it. And since I saved it as Z underscore, I have it here. I want to save it. Go to SmartList. Let me rebuild it again. And I might have had SmartList open earlier here. Let me just scroll down. Okay. Let's look under the purchasing folder again. And there it is, paid transactions. So under paid transactions, I can see the columns that I've chosen. I have the voucher number, vendor ID. I have the document type, the doc date, and you can see that my display on the column heading is what I changed it to, doc date, doc number, doc amount, 1099 amount, and the vendor name. So the first columns came from one table, but the vendor name came from the secondary table that we added, and that we had built the relationship between the two tables. So now we have all this data in one SmartList. So as you can see, the document type here is in integers and doesn't really have any meaning to us, so we could change that the next time we go back to SmartList Builder. Under search in any SmartList, you can see that you have 4 different ways to filter or restrict the results of your SmartList. You can continue to do so in your SmartList Builder objects to use these column names and definitions and filters, but you also have the ability to place your fixed restrictions on your SmartList using SmartList Builder. So right now, we are looking at documents that are for multiple years. And what I'd like to do with this SmartList is be able to pare it down to just the current year. So we're going to put that restriction in our SmartList Builder. And I don't want to do it here in the search because you'll have to save it as a favorite. We can do it in SmartList Builder, and it'll automatically save it for this SmartList object. So I'm going to close SmartList, go back to SmartList Builder. Here is our SmartList object, and under restrictions, we can now enter restrictions for this SmartList. If we wanted to restrict this for the current year, we could add a restriction and say, I would like all of the transactions that show up here to be the current year. So I will use the document date as the field for determining the restriction that I want all documents that are between a date range. So I can choose between, and as you can see, you can have different restrictions set up here. You can have equal to, contains, begins with, is between. So it looks very much like the same restrictions in SmartList. But in doing the restriction here in SmartList Builder, it will be a permanent type of restriction. So I want it to be between, and I want the value to be the beginning of this year and the beginning and the end of this year. I'll save this, and I want all of my paid transactions in here. I also want to make sure that I have all my invoice types only. So if I want all invoice types, I can do that. So I'll do paid transactions, and I'm going to change this to just say current year, because at that point in the year 2013, it's always going to grab 2013 paid transactions, and as I cross over to the new year, that restriction is only going to restrict my results to whatever year I'm in the system. I'm going to jump back to the document type because I'm going to use that as a restriction as well. But in the document type, that is where you would see the differences between the invoice, a miscellaneous charge, a payment, a credit memo, and finance charges. So while I could have all the document types in this SmartList, I'd like to only pull invoices. So what would be meaningful to me is if I had the document types defined for myself so I can make the restriction that makes sense. And so it's quite difficult to understand what those integers mean. So you can click this copy function, and it gives you automatically the values of those document types. Whereas you saw them in the SmartList as integers, we can actually see that in the payable transactions, it gives us those values. So the value of 1 is actually an invoice. The value of 2 in that field is finance charge. The value of 3 is miscellaneous charge. 4 is return. 5 is credit memo. And 6 is payment. So if I wanted to just see invoices, I could do that. Or if I wanted to see finance charges or miscellaneous charges, I could do that as well. But what I think I'm going to do is grab everything except for payments. So I'm going to borrow that mapping by using that copy feature and I looked at the paid transactions and I saw the actual definition of those values. And when I selected that, it actually allowed me to copy it. So after I copy it over, and these are the definitions of those integer values in that field, I can save it. And now what I can do is put a restriction using that document type. Not only do I want to see just documents for this current year, but I would also like all of the document types that I choose to include. So I could say I want all document types, but not equal to payment. So what this will do is it'll give me everything from expenses, credit memos, returns, miscellaneous charges. The only thing it will not give me is payments. And one of the reasons why I would do that is I'd like to know how much I've spent on a vendor in a given year. So by taking out all of the payments, I have a good running tally of the invoices and credit transactions and other charges that I have spent on a given vendor in a given year. The other restriction that you can do here is you can apply the restriction to all users, or you can actually select the users that can have this restriction. For now, I'm going to use all users here, and so all users will be able to have this restriction on that SmartList. So let's save that and see what happened to our SmartList. So I'm going to save the SmartList Builder, and it's very important to save every time. Some users tend to close the window before saving, and if you don't save, then you will lose the changes that you've made. So make sure to save your changes, close out of SmartList Builder, and let's go to SmartList again. And again, you'll be prompted to refresh your SmartList with the changes we made. So under purchasing, now you can see that my view has changed. I modified it to be current year because I've added the restriction to show me the transactions for just the current year. The other change we made was the document type. So now you don't see integers. You actually see meaningful data under that column. You'll see it's a credit memo. You'll see that this is an invoice. And as you scroll down, these are all of transactions for the given year. You will see that it's already dropped anything that's not in the year 2013. And as I scroll to the right, I can see that the vendor name is still there, as well as all the other options that I chose. As you can see, the credit memo here has a document amount of $500, and the invoice shows also a positive amount. And that's something that we can change as well. So let's go back to our SmartList Builder because it'll give us another chance to change the display options for ourselves, as well as we're going to go through how you can do a calculated field and add it to your SmartList. SmartList Builder allows you to really go back and forth and be able to make the changes that you need to get you the meaningful data. So as I go forward here, I want to see the document type here, and that we changed that. And the document amount is very meaningful to me. And I'd like to see anything that's a debit transaction, like an invoice or a miscellaneous charge or a finance charge, to be showing up as a positive amount. And I'd like to see credit transactions to be a negative amount. And that's something that we can do in SmartList. So another display option that you have is for document amounts, you can display you can show currency symbol. And for numeric values, you can also show percentage symbol, and you can show thousand separator if you'd like. You can add or modify the number of decimal places. And then the negative values, you can actually display transactions based on negative fields. So in the table, paid transaction history file, and then the document type, I can actually designate my credit transactions to show up as a negative value. So while invoice is a debit transaction, and I know that's a positive value, I want my returns and credit memos to show up as negative values. And we know that we filtered out payments, so that's kind of a non-issue here because we're not pulling in payments into our SmartList. So what this is going to give me is a negative value for document amounts when the transaction type is return or credit memo. I can save this. So we've changed the document amount, and the other thing that we'd like to do is put in a calculated field. One of the things that we can do is provide a full address for the vendor itself. So we can do that by pulling multiple fields that have the address and putting it together as a calculated field. I know that in my paid transaction history file, I don't have the address information. I probably just have the address ID associated with the vendor. As you can see, there are no address fields here. But in the vendor master file, we have address information that we can put together to put together a full address as one of our fields. So under the calculations tool, you can click on calculations and we can create a calculated field. There's a lot of different types of calculations you can do. You can do conditional statements, you can do strings and put them together like we're about to do. And this could involve a little bit of programming, but you can work with some of your tools to understand what the scripting would be and the coding would be for the kind of data that you're trying to calculate. In our case, we're just going to do a simple one called a full address, or we could just say vendor address. And this is going to be a string for us. And I'd like to put together the entire address for the vendor. So I know that address 1 is the first one, and I would like to put that together with a space in between address 2, add it to space, add address 3, plus a space, and then the city with a comma, add the state, space, and then the zip code. And after I do my calculation, I can validate, make sure it's okay, and it looks like I have a syntax error somewhere. So it must be somewhere down here. Great. So now we know calculated field is valid. We can save this, and now you can see it's a vendor address. That's the name of our field. That is a string type that was able to put together all of these fields and put it into one field in the SmartList. I'll save this, hit OK, and now you'll see it's listed under my tables here. Calculated field is the vendor address. I can still change the name here as vendor full address if I wanted to, and add it to my list. The other thing I can do is look at the columns, and I want it to be in a certain order. This can also be done in SmartList, but if we do it here within SmartList Builder, it'll be a permanent type of setup here, and a permanent change. So if I want my full address to be a little further down, I could move it down to under vendor ID, and I want my vendor name moved up right next to the vendor ID. I can do that as well. I can move my voucher number down closer to the document type. And so I can move my columns in the order that I'd like to see them on the SmartList, hit save, and that's another way of changing your display options. Now let's take a look at our calculated field and our columns. So I've saved it. close SmartList Builder, and let's go back to SmartList. Okay. Going back to my purchasing, paid transactions. You can see now that my column sort is in the order that I've decided to do on the SmartList Builder, to have the vendor ID first, the vendor name. I have my vendor full address here. I have my document type in the meaningful values, my voucher number, my document date, document number, and my doc amount, which we also changed, where a credit memo would be a negative, and the invoice and debit transactions are actual positive values. And that'll come in handy later when we do our summaries and our totals. Okay. One of the things that we'd like to do is to be able to create SmartList that summarize the data. So, apologize, I closed it there, but what I'd like to do, and this is a very good example for it, is you can see that we've got all the transactions for all of these vendors, and it's got all of their debit transactions and credit transactions, but not payments. And this is a good way for tallying how much we've spent on the vendors. Instead of exporting to Excel and doing the manual process of tallying them up or totaling them, what we can do is create a summary view of the same data. So let's close this and go back to SmartList Builder, and we can create a summarized view of the same data from this SmartList that we just created. Let's go back to Tools, SmartList Builder, SmartList Builder. And I know I have my Z vendor all transactions. What I can do is create a copy of this and use that as the basis for my summarized view of the same data. So instead of starting from scratch to build the same SmartList report, you have the option to actually duplicate the same definitions and the same settings to a second SmartList and use that to create a summarized view of the data. Again, for this detailed SmartList view, what you can do is choose to duplicate all the SmartList definitions from this SmartList to a second one and use that for your summarized data. I can go to Options, Duplicate, and it'll tell me that I can make a duplicate of the same SmartList object. I'm going to create it as a SmartList, and I'm going to name this as and say Paid Transactions Summary Current Year. So it will duplicate for me all the definitions from this original SmartList object to this new one that we're going to work with. As you can see, you have a drop down here. You do have the option to create a new list type in your Excel report in the navigation list. These are two different tools outside of SmartList where you can duplicate a SmartList object. But for our purposes in today's training, we're going to stick with the SmartList type and duplicate that. And let's create a summarized view based on that definition. So now you see that we have this as our second SmartList object, but this is going to be a summarized view of that vendor transaction. So what we can do is create a summary, and I'd like to be able to create a summary by clicking on the summary here. To make this into a summary view, you just have to click this checkbox, and you have to choose what kind of summary type you'd like to be able to see for the fields that we have on the SmartList. So we know for sure that in the vendor ID, we can do a count here, or we can actually do this as group by, because we want to be able to group by vendor ID. We want to see the totals of all the transactions by vendor ID. So the summary method for the vendor ID is group by.